Okay, so today, this is the second to last video that I am doing before I hit 300. So I will probably do one tomorrow, and then it'll take me to 300, and I'm really excited about that one. I was thinking on the way over here to the park, it's like, I got real excited for the first, like, once I hit like 100 videos, but I don't remember 200 at all. Like, it was sometime back in the spring, but I don't know if I just wasn't paying attention enough to what was going on at that point in time that I just missed it, or what happened. But 300 I'm kind of excited for, because I feel like I'm at the point where everything in my day-to-day life feels like it's starting to shift and kick into a little bit of higher gear. And that's fun, particularly on the writing end, because of the writing thing that I got signed up to do this week, the Hay House Writers Workshop. Yesterday I discovered that I prefer watching the replay, because then I can just, the first time through, every time I need to stop and make note of something, I can just pause it as I go and, you know, take as long as I need. I think it ended up taking me like 3 hours to get through the whole thing, but it was no big deal. Of course, I also had to watch yesterday's video and get it posted beforehand, and so I did that. My hair stuck to the tree. But yeah, so I was thinking, like, because the first year that I did the whole YouTube thing, I wasn't really focused on growing things at all. It was very slow and paced to not overwhelm me with anything, I think, because there was a whole lot that I was trying to navigate my way through and, you know, discover for myself on the healing process, stuff with my family and whatnot, that, you know, I kind of blocked myself from really looking at the full extent of what was going on in my day-to-day existence and dealing with my family, and basically, you know, for my entire life. So it was very slow. Of course, I started because the whole twin flame thing came up, and I had this very strong impression of he had to be in the spotlight for me to find him, but how was he ever going to find me if I didn't start doing more than I'd ever done, right? So November 11th, 2023, I started the channel, and did my first video. That one I didn't repost after I took everything down. The first little bit, I did a small handful of videos between November and December, and then I had exhausted myself so completely because I'd expanded far beyond what I thought myself to be capable of. And so I had to take a break, and I took, like, I think it ended up being 2.5 months off. And in that time I deleted everything, unfortunately. Really wish I hadn't done that, but live and learn. So November 11th, 2023 to November 11th, 2024, I think I made it to like 80 some videos. And then when I saw how close I was to 100, I was like, I bet I could get that in before the end of the year, right? So the end of before the end of 2024. So I kind of pushed it, and that was like the first time I saw any kind of growth. You know, because the first year I was at 12 subscribers, and, you know, I've talked a few times about the first 3. I cried because I was so overwhelmed at, what if I can't do this? What if I can't do the thing that I know I'm supposed to do in this space? And so it was very overwhelming. And then after that, it got a little easier. And then, so once I got to the first 100, and just I think picking up the pace and how often I was posting videos, was what saw the jump, and it was like, you know, the first time it was like 37, and I know that number because that was my grandfather's number that was following me around everywhere, that really started getting my attention in 2023, going back to when I turned my love and career lives over to the universe to take the lead on, and then I start seeing 37 everywhere, right? And then I started going to the classes at Inner Path. Damn bugs. In January 2024. I had looked into it in 2021, and I didn't go through with it. I think like the end of 2021, beginning 2022. And of course, that was, you know, right in line with the connecting at an energetic level to the twin flame and the beginning of the purge / clearing of the dense stuck energies in my system, but I didn't really know what the connection was with that person until after 2023. So yeah, but yeah, I don't know where 200 went. It's just okay. It's gone. And then next thing I know, I'm approaching 300, and I'm like starting to get really excited because everything feels a little different. Like I feel like I'm in a new space in the energetic connection with, you know, the life I want to manifest and have been working toward manifesting for a while. Sorry, I have a dog hair in my shoe. It's distracting me now that I see it. And I can't get it. We're just going to stop looking at it. Yeah. So, tomorrow, will be 300. And that's kind of exciting. But the more exciting thing that I've kind of been navigating this week. Okay. So I talked about the writer's workshop. And you know, yesterday I spent quite a bit of time talking about the different times that I've attempted the writing project, right? So like in 2021, I did the 30-day write your book challenge and did not finish it because I kept getting stuck. With the dense energies. Like I kept trying to make myself write the thing, and I kept going back into the heavy, dense energy aspect of it, and then I'd get to a point where I just couldn't go on any further. And it was a lot of work. And then, of course, the whole twin flame thing came up. And then there again, when I ended up in the live stream, I made a comment, he responded, and it suddenly felt like, you know, I was like a mouse running through a kitchen and somebody turned the lights on, right? And so it's like just that energetic level. It was like I suddenly was very aware I'd been seen and there was no more hiding, right? And so I had dreams that were kind of supporting that no more hiding kind of idea. Yeah. But anyway, then I also did the Hay House Writers Workshop a couple years ago, I think. I wanted to say probably in 2023. I'll have to look into that a little more. That feels like the right sort of time frame because again, it was the writing. And I got a lot of information out of the thing. I did the VIP that time around. And took lots of notes, got a lot of information, and then didn't get it written, right? Because there again, there was still stuff that I was working through. And of course, 2023 was, when I turned my love and career lives over to the universe to take the lead on. And then, this thing pops up. It's like, okay, well, here's an opportunity to work more on the writing end of it, right? And, I think the big thing was I was starting to get messages about the need to set boundaries, but I wasn't really good at figuring out what that meant or what that looked like in practice. Again, when I started the classes at Inner Path, which is a little metaphysical shop, little spider, then like the big thing was boundaries, right? And so I went to Lanita's class, and like the big thing, she said immediately, you know, the first thing she does with new students is check in with their guides and figure out what they need most direction on, right? And what came through for me was I needed help with boundaries and shielding and protecting my energy, right? So once January 2024 rolled around, then I started going to the classes, started figuring out the protecting my boundaries thing and protecting my energy. And then, of course, that helped with 1111 with the healing process with the family shit, honestly. Like, I started, you know, really navigating that whole thing and realizing how much of the junk that I was carrying was stuff that, you know, was just kind of dumped on me by my family, right? And, you know, I've talked a lot on here about how, you know, I would always get real motivated to start cleaning, and I would clean for like several days, and then I would just randomly hit the wall, right? And couldn't go any further. And what I noticed when I started hitting the wall was their crap started like creeping back in and taking over. And so what I was realizing was when I wasn't setting any kind of boundaries, you know, it's like I was just being overwhelmed by their junk, right? Whether actual physical junk in the physical space that is shared at the moment, or energetically speaking, there's a bunch of that too. So it has been especially essential on this process for me to get into exercising regularly. There again, when I started roller derby back in 2022, we did this new skaters workshop, and what I realized was I quit in my head long before I ever gave my body the chance to quit on me. It's like my body's never given up on me yet, but I always quit in my head long before, you know, I even see how much I'm capable of doing, right? So once I made that realization, then it was like, well, I'm gonna have to fucking suck this up and figure out how to do this, right? And that was a whole thing. The first year, I did get to play for the actual season. I was going to play in the first game of the season, which was also the first game back from the pandemic, but I ended up getting bronchitis and had to miss that one. And then I did play the next 3 games, and it was good, but in all the pictures I look like I'm gonna cry. It's like, what the fuck is that all about? Well, going back to the not protecting my energy thing, I think it was just, you know, picking up other people's junk and being overwhelmed by it, not knowing what to do with it, not even realizing I was picking up other people's junk. You know, but I started doing the roller derby thing, and then at the end of the first season, I had the night where I thought I was having a heart attack, and so I was out about playing for a while, right? So I was like dodging practices, like even throughout the off season, and just avoiding it because essentially I was afraid that I was gonna fuck myself up. I did end up on blood pressure meds, and I had a sleep study done and ended up on a CPAP machine for a while. And they helped immensely. But what ended up happening was I didn't make the points that I needed to play the first couple of games of the next season. And once I realized that, I was kind of kicking myself, and I started going to like all the practices, or as many as I could, as often as I could. And then I kind of like started accidentally losing weight, and that was helpful. You know, and there's like some stuff with the Honda job I had for a while, just walking all the time at the factory and living on fruit snacks and Dr. Pepper, and yet somehow losing a bunch of weight that way, but I didn't really notice it because I wasn't trying to put forth the effort to lose weight, right? And then I started skating by myself outside. Well, actually, before I get there, well, no, it was before. I tried it a couple times in June. It didn't stick. Oh, there's a dog running loose. There are people over there. I'm going to assume that he's theirs, because they're looking at him. But anyway, so I skated by myself a few times, but it's still in the middle of the season, so I didn't make it a big thing. I am really distracted with this dog. Like a pointer or something. Skated a couple times by myself, started the factory job, turned my 11 career lives over to the universe. So it's 2023. And then got to a point after the season ended where I kind of got really into skating outside by myself, and kind of became a little bit obsessive about it for a while, and realized I was like making all sorts of connections that I hadn't. Yeah, it's definitely their dog. That I hadn't really been able to look at before. It's like connecting with like other timelines, if you will, and being in this energetic space where, hey, I have friends there. And so it started being this weird thing where I would okay, first thing, for the Halloween bout that year, I had this thought of, I knew it was coming, and I was like, well, if X, Y, and Z happens, then I'll go ahead and sign up for it. And then the more I got to thinking about it, it's like, that's stupid. The fact that I posed that thought at all suggests that I'm interested in it already. So why wouldn't I just go ahead and do it? So I sucked it up and signed up for it. And I played in the Halloween bout. It was fun. And then after that was over, there was another new skater workshop for, people that weren't on the team at that point, but potentially wanted to play. And I went just to be one of the skaters on the team that was there, being encouraging, I guess, of the people who were like brand new to skating. Not all of them were, but there were a chunk that were. So the bigger thing was, while I was there, it's like I had this experience where, like, at this physical level I was with these other skaters, right? But it was like there was this other level where I was completely connected with these other group of people, and I was more interested in what was going on in that space than the space that I was physically in, right? So I decided to retire from Derby, right? I did like a season and a half, and then I retired. But I got what I needed out of it because it helped me learn to skate, helped me learn to fall. That was fun. Hit people, that's always fun. legally, of course, for derby rules and whatnot. And then I just started skating by myself and realized I enjoyed that more. And whatever this other space was that I seemed to be able to keep connecting into. And, you know, after I was doing that for a while with connecting to people in this other space, I went to another one of the Lanita's classes, and she said she was talking about astral projection, and I said, I don't know if I do that, and she says, oh, you do. And I was like, oh, is that what I'm doing? I don't know. Right? I don't really know what's happening. I'm just new to this whole thing and trying to figure shit out. Right? So it's like this other timeline space that I like. You know, it's like, I don't know where those people went. It's like learning a whole bunch of things about, you know, things I'd never really considered being possible before, right? Like shit, even the twin flame connection in and of itself, it's like, I know a lot of people hear that idea and immediately that just sounds silly. And, you know, there are, of course, people who have made money off of innocent, unexpecting people that wanted to be part of this thing. And so they, you know, followed their fucked up teachings and whatnot and just ended up being out the money and having a whole lot of heartache otherwise, because what the teachers were claiming to do, they weren't actually claiming or weren't actually doing. And I know there was like a documentary on Netflix or something about it. It was kind of a weird thing because one of my derby friends that I had talked to about this twin flame thing, she had watched the little cult thing on Netflix, and it's like, yeah, not that kind. It's like, it was like, it's literally this thing that I can't explain that's forcing me to have to dive into deeper aspects of myself that I wouldn't have considered, I wouldn't have put forth the effort to before, because, you know, I was trying to think I didn't need to go any deeper in these things, but it's like the only way to heal some of it is to go all the way through it, and, you know, that's what a lot of it has been. So that's just, it's just a really weird experience, and I don't know how to explain it otherwise. And, you know, it's one of those things, it's like you have to be really discerning with the types of information you take in on it, you know. And of course, when you're starting out in the spiritual stuff too, you know, it's like generally there's something that's going on that you don't really understand and you want to learn more about, right? So because you're still iffy and trying to navigate, you know, well, you're going to connect with the things that are on the same frequency that you're operating on, right? So yeah, it's like the stuff that was coming across my path initially, it's like I had to be really careful with what I chose to listen to. And as an example of that, you know, I started damn spiders. I started the class at Inner Path. There were two of them. There was the psychic development one, and then the other one, which is God Sign. And, you know, that one is basically talking about all the ways spirit shows itself, right? And that's like on a day-to-day basis, and you come in and share your stories and all that stuff. The first time I went, I was aware of the twin flame connection, and I didn't really know much about it. And I mentioned that I was on a twin flame journey, and Annie was very skeptical on the twin flame thing, and she said as much. She said that she doesn't think it is what a lot of people believe it to be, and a lot of people get taken advantage of on that end because, you know, they think it's something that it's not, and then it's like, just the way she was talking about it, she was like, well, we'll have to do a class on it sometime, and I just immediately thinking, that's a class I'm going to miss, because, like, if she were to actually do it, it's like, because, you know, like, that already suggests, I don't like that part, that already suggests that, you know, she doesn't buy into it, and since it's something that I know is true for me, you know, based on the fact that it's literally the thing that started forcing me to have to heal, clear out the junk and actually heal, right? And it was like stuff I couldn't avoid anymore. So, you know, for her to be so obviously skeptical and non-believing of it, then it was just like, that's not something I'm here for, right? That's not information I'm receiving from this space. This space has a lot of good information. I've learned a ton about a whole lot of things in there, you know, and that was where I made the, well, actually both classes are where I made the connection about the dogs. Excuse me, going again, this is something I talked about in the first handful of videos. Gem Goddess, the tarot reading I watched of hers back in like 2020, where she pulled this card and she says, black dogs are important and mean it's about time. It's like, obviously that's for me, because this is the only time in my life I've ever had black dogs, and I have 3 that are primarily black. And interestingly enough, since I'm in the situation where I'm, you know, living in my parents' house post-divorce and haven't made it out of there yet, Pepper she's gray, but she's got a lot of black on her. But then Piper, the new rescue that I didn't want, is black and white also. So I was like, I feel like that's relevant on there as well. It's just more boundary protection, right? So of course, you know, I watched the tarot reading where she says black dogs are important and mean it's about time. Obviously it's important because, you know, this is a situation I find myself in, having 3 primarily black dogs, and, you know, now 2 more in the house that are, I mean, Pepper's always been there, but she's my parents' dog. But then the other one is new, and she also fits that category. But then when I started taking the classes with Lanita, she was talking about, of course, ways to shield and protect your energy. And she's, you know, was talking about different rocks and stuff that you can use. So, of course, you know, Obsidian is my go-to, and this is like my favorite one ever because it's got the yin-yang, which I've always been drawn to, and I had earrings back in 7th grade that I still have, actually 2 pairs, that I always just like stared at the symbol. It was like, this is important, but I don't really know why. But now I'm figuring out why. But yeah, and completely connected on the twin flame stuff as well, and, you know, the masculine and feminine, balancing the aspects within and all that fun stuff. But yeah, so she talked about the different rocks, and, you know, black rocks or red or brown rocks, you know, are good for shielding and protecting energy, right? Stupid bugs. So, like, okay. And then she said, beyond that, color can also be used, right? So then she was talking about same colors, black, brown, red, also, you know, associated with root chakra and safety type things. So that goes with the protection thing, right? Grounding and protecting. And I had something that came to my mind, and then I got distracted by a leaf falling. I don't know, the next week, in Annie's class, we were talking about colors and, the frequency of colors and whatnot, and what different colors represent. And somebody asked what black meant, and she said black, she associates black with the void or with source, because everything comes from the void, right? So then I'm thinking, I've just suddenly taken this information from Gem Goddess and her reading that said black dogs are important and mean it's about time, and then I'm realizing that at a time I wasn't able to protect my energy myself, or didn't even know it was a thing that I needed to do. Then I end up with these, 3 black dogs, which 3 is one of those numbers too. It's kind of divine, if you will. And I've been seeing it a lot, 33. And it showed, I picked a Nordic Light tarot reading this morning, and she had like all these 3s that she pulled up for the pile that I picked, and she commented about that in the video. And then I paused the video at one point to go in the other room, and it was 33 minutes in. It's of course, right? That one of those numbers that's just following me everywhere. So then Annie talks about, the color being associated with source, and then I'm thinking, so actually at a time that I didn't know I needed to tend to my boundaries or have any kind of awareness of anything that was going on, then I end up with these dogs, and they're essentially serving that purpose for me, right? So it's just kind of a little trippy thing. But I learned a lot starting out on those kind of topics, but it's one of those things that it was very much Annie was skeptical about it and appeared skeptical about it, so it's she's not one I need to hear this information from. But then when I mentioned it to Lanita, she suggested Morganite as a heart chakra, so it's a heart healing stone, and she said for twin flame connection that might be helpful as well. So I got that and love that one. Got a couple different bracelets of it. But yeah, so pulling the grass again. Okay. What else? That was a lot of tangent about that stuff. Going back to the writing thing again. So yesterday, when I watched the replay of yesterday's class, they had this section where Colette Baron Reed led this one section and was talking about connecting to the spirit of your book. And she was talking about the book that you are meant to write. It's, it has its own life and spirit, and you're basically just the transmitter, right? So, like a radio picking up the radio station playing the music. It's just transmitting the thing, right? It's not making the music or anything like that. It's just playing it so you can hear it, right? So yeah, so she was talking about that, and then she did this meditation to connect with the spirit of the book more. And she's talking also about how, the book that you're here to write, it's yours to write. It's your story to share, but still it's just, the spirit, it's essentially connecting with spirit to tell the story, right? That wants to be told, that needs to be told. And one of the things she was talking about was inspiration versus motivation. And when she was talking about motivation, I just had this kind of epiphany of that's kind of why I didn't have more success on the writing end before 2023, where I committed my love and career lives over to the universe to lead. But then, there was that, in 2021 when I did the 30-day Write Your Book Challenge, and then didn't get it done because I kept going into the negativity and I couldn't get myself back out because I wasn't connecting to the spirit of the book or spirit in general to navigate this whole thing, right? So Then the next time around, I, took the class that Hay House was doing, and got a lot of good information, but it's like I still didn't have the right thing that I needed. And a part of that was the awareness of having solid boundaries, right? Not just allowing everybody to pull on my energy like my family has, I was raised to do with my family. Just go along with whatever whims they have, because I didn't have boundaries. So then, I do this meditation thing and have this little class or the class within a class that Colette was talking about. And it's like, ooh, this is it. Right? So, I woke up in the middle of the night and I wrote some things down, and it's like, I feel like it is starting to take its own life now, right? So like the spirit of the book, if you will, is trying to, it's a dance, right? So it's like we're working together to make it make sense, to help me understand the message that I'm meant to be sharing as well, which is a huge one that I've been talking about on here over and over and over again, all along my YouTube journey. But yeah, when I was writing about it last night, it's just like, ooh, this is important. This is big. And, really just helped me to realize how, that's the most important part with my journey, period, is trusting and just taking the next step that is presented to me. Because if I started looking at like the big picture, all zoomed out and everything, I'd freak myself the fuck out on this whole thing. I've done it many times throughout my life where it just like freak out, shut down, and we're just going to disappear inside myself and go crab mode, right? Interesting thing on crab mode. So I've been talking about the current mouse issue in our house, and last night we had a bunch of traps that we set in the pantry and under the stove, and we had 3 mice that we caught this morning. Now, keeping in mind there's a ton of construction in our area right now, and they are getting ready to rip up the field across the road from us to put in a neighborhood, but just like the work they're doing on the road and the roundabout they put in, is like there's been a lot that's been cleared out, right? So then too, it's also fall, so seasons are changing, and they're looking for their little warm spot to go and whatnot. But it was like we have all this stuff going on, and then we ended up with this mouse issue because, of course, then too, my dad doesn't clean up after himself, and leaves bagel crumbs everywhere, and apparently they were literally everywhere. But anyway, caught 3 mice, right? So in one night. And we're going to set a bunch more traps tonight and hopefully get to the bottom of it soon. But on that end, the other day, I was out in the garage and looked under this dog bath thing that we have out there, and saw that the mouse trap out there had been tripped. I was like, all right. So I look at it. It's like, that is not a mouse. And what I see is a claw. It's like, oh, that's funky. And so, my first thought is like, is it a claw or is it a beak? Because I could see it both ways, but I was pretty sure it was a claw, right? So, it makes sense. My parents said they saw a crawdad in the garage at some point in the not too distant past. And yeah, so we know at least one has been in there, right? I don't know that they noticed whether that one was missing a claw or not. It might have been. But of course, it makes you think, well, I mean, it's just the arm in there. It didn't kill the whole thing or whatever. And then when I moved the trap out of the garage, just the way that the arm was in there was kind of, that's kind of interesting. And then I mentioned it to my brother, like I sent him a picture, because it was kind of weird. And I said, so we caught this. And I don't really remember the conversation, but I remember I found this little GIF thing on Messenger, because I said something about a crab dropping claw or something. I don't know, something along that line. And what showed up was this little thing from SpongeBob with Mr. Krabs, and he's standing there, and then there's this little picture of a seal that kind of moves across the screen in front of him, and then a couple seconds later, his both of his arms fall off, like his claws. It's like, huh. But then last night, that makes me, start thinking about it. It's like, of course, that makes sense. I think I talked about yesterday's video where kind of the idea of crabs regenerating appendages, right? Just like, well, lizards do it, why not, right? So, I think I've had 7 leopard geckos, and 2 of them I got that had regenerated tails, and that was part of the reason I got them, was because, it was kind of cool. The first one was like the hell was that place? I don't know, some pet store I don't go to that often, and I just paid normal price for it with 2 others. So I had Phoenix, Frenzy, and Fury from that batch, and then years later I ended up with another one because of my ex and his lizard chaos, and we were going to PetSmart all the time. One of the cashiers asked me one day, she said, we have a gecko that's had a regenerated tail and we can't sell him at normal price. Do you want him? And so I got this discounted gecko from PetSmart because he had a regenerated tail. It's like, I'm pretty sure I paid regular price for the other one. But like it was kind of weird. Like the first one, what was his name? Or what was her name? I think it was Fury that had the goofy tail. I think. So I got that one because it was interesting to see what it looked like, and I wanted to make sure that I could say, hey, this is what they do when they get freaked out, but don't try to freak it out because we don't need one that loses its tail. We already have one that has lost its tail, right? So, I've seen lots of pictures where like they don't grow back the same. I've seen that Fury had, and that's real, like a mind fuck too, because my ex wanted to name the red bearded dragon Fury, and I don't like recycling animal names. But alas, we did that time, so mind fuck. Anyway, so her tail looked like a little light bulb for like a Christmas candle, and it was kind of cool. And then the other one, it was kind of similar, but it had a longer end on it. And, I've seen pictures of them where they've grown like 2 or 3 back in their place of the original. So then I'm kind of thinking about this idea of, do crab claws grow back the same? Or roughly the same? Or, is there a chance that you're going to get something completely jacked up? Like, how does all that work? Like lizards, and their tails, it, might not grow back a normal tail. But how does it work on claws? I don't know. But anyway, so last night I'm thinking about this whole crab thing. And then I'm thinking about, all my cancer placements and my crabby nature and all this fun stuff. And it's like, so is this basically like my, like, I don't know if you want to say like the coping mechanisms. It's like when something's not working out, then we're just like cut it off and like start all over and, you know, give it another shot, see what grows back in its place, kind of a thing. So I was kind of thinking about that on that end. And, you know, I think that's relevant for my writing path as well, less directly. But what I've been thinking about today is like, I don't know if it's coping mechanism so much as beliefs. And it's like, you know, there would be something come up where I'd have a belief that, you know, something maybe wounded or damaged it in some kind of way. And it's like, okay, so that's clearly not what I believe. So, you know, so then it's like, are we just like cutting that whole thing and giving it the opportunity to grow back differently? I've been spending a lot of time just, you know, turning this idea over in my head today, just on the crab claw regeneration thing. But yeah, and like that was the visual I had last night when that came to mind, was like every time something didn't work when I was growing up, and it was just like, okay, cut this off and like we'll throw that away and try again and see what happens next, right? So apparently, you know, I watched a little video where, you know, like this little crab just like took its own arm off, and it's kind of weird to watch, but kind of cool, I guess. But then I'm thinking about, there too, you know, it talks about they'll remove them if they, like the arm, if it's, damaged, if it was injured in a fight or something, or just whatever, right? They can take them off, but the younger ones grow back quicker because they molt like 2 or 3 times a year, whereas the older ones generally just molt 1 time a year, so it takes a little bit longer for them to grow back, which that adds a whole nother layer to this whole thing too, about, you know, changing your beliefs as you're younger versus when you're older, kind of a perspective on things, I guess. So yeah, anyway, another weird thing that I'm just kind of turning over in my head because it's weird, and now it's got my attention, and because of this whole stupid mouse situation, and then this other thing, just like, you know, just like my zodiac sign, just like all the weirdness, the weird connections and whatnot. It's like the way Spirit's teaching me, right? So it's like literally using everything that comes up as a means of teaching me. And, you know, it ultimately always has been, but like when, you know, when I didn't have boundaries and like I was just accumulating all this other junk and bad beliefs and whatnot, it's like I didn't know what to make sense of anything, right? It's like I've always felt strongly that I definitely believe there's something more out there that's going on and kind of in some kind of control, if you will, of everything that happens, and, you know, presenting the lessons you need on the journey and all this stuff. But even then, like when I was when I was 12 and invited the demons in, right? So it was a whole bunch of stuff in my life had gone wrong. My great-grandfather passed away, my dog had to be put down, and then my cousin started saying shit about me at school, almost drowned in the ocean, you know. So it's like there was this whole series of things where I got to a point where, okay, God must hate me. If God hates me, then I hate God. You know, because of that, inviting in the demons, which I think is essentially where a lot of that transmutation piece is. And, like, you know, I've talked about, you know, like I have other energies that latch onto me, and then it's up to me to clear them from my system. I think largely because of this thing that I invited in when I was 12, so 30 years ago. Wow. You know, but like the whole journey, I've been working on learning the lessons I needed to learn, and yeah, there've been blocks and whatnot. And I watched this video on Instagram the other day, MojaveandWolf, I think. where she was talking about she's talking about the story of Mary Magdalene, and basically she had what amounts to a bunch of chakra blockages, right? And the word they used in the scripture was Daimon, which has been shifted to mean demon and that, like, this whole other thing, but essentially it's just a block, right? So when, you know, she was healed, it was basically having these blockages removed, right? So it's like, okay, so that makes perfect sense, especially going back to this idea of having invited in the demons and it being this other thing. So it was just like, I've definitely felt a whole lot of blockages, energetically speaking. You know, and like when, like last year, there were a couple nights that I woke up and it felt like there was something at this energetic level that was actively working on helping me to clear some of these blockages, right? And it's like, it's just like I woke up and felt different, right? And it's like, you know, like, okay, and the other time where I woke up and as I was waking up, I hear someone whisper Mookaite Jasper. It's like, obviously that's important because it stuck with me. I heard it and it stuck with me as I was waking up, right? So that became one of those highly important ones that I have on a necklace. And I think the page, it's on Etsy, or the shop is like KGN or KDN Gems. I don't know. I've tagged them before, I've mentioned them before. Put them again. But yeah, it's like as soon as I saw that or heard that, then it's like I'm looking for Mookaite Jasper because obviously that's important because I woke up and had it whispered in my ear and nobody was there. So, you know, it was like in that kind of time frame where it was like I felt different throughout the process, and like the healing work that was being done through me, with me, by me, for me, all those things, whatever. Yeah. But that, like, Mookaite Jasper ended up being one that's like, I read something that talked about, now it's tied in there. Something about generational cords or toxic connections on the family line, whatever. And, you know, it's like, oh, that's important. So I started having it on me at all times and, you know, started disconnecting from my family even more. And then it's like they're trying to figure out why they can't access me like they could before, you know. And then, you know, in the time frame where I'd started the YouTube channel and wasn't telling anybody about it, especially my brother, because I knew that if I had told him about it, he would have said something to our parents about it, because he would have been of the mind that, you know, I was putting the family at risk, right? Ooh, that is a dog running. Yeah, so you just got an owner throwing a ball for him. But yeah, like, so when I first started the YouTube thing, I wouldn't talk to my brother about it at all. And then, you know, I started setting boundaries with the family and pulling back my energy and disconnecting from them in other ways. And as I was, you know, making connections for myself, I started sharing with my brother what I was learning, and then he started noticing it, right? So then, you know, like for the Mookaite, I had some palm stones, and I set him up with some of those too. So, and I, you know, once he started disconnecting from the family more, I was like, yeah, that's probably my fault. And yeah, he actually thanked me for it. Although if I would have told him exactly what it was for before, he probably would have been a little more sketchy about it. So, hold on. But yeah, it wasn't until he started disconnecting his energy from the family as well that I finally got to a point where I trusted that I could tell him what I was doing and he wasn't going to freak out about it, right? Going back to that, you know, the toxic family dynamic and how we were ultimately taught to... there was a whole lot of obsession around the idea of if you have secrets, it means you're doing something you're not supposed to do. And, you know, that's one of those things that is, you know, it was kind of big in keeping us locked into our dysfunction. And you know, once we started being made aware of that and really coming to terms with how we got to be in our early to mid 40s with so little to show for our lifetimes because of this family situation, it's like, I don't want this existence anymore. The one that I can't have a life of my own. The one where, you know, I can't fully trust my brother because, you know, he's caught up with the bullshit with the family, or that I can't even be trusted by him because of this toxic family dynamic that we grew up thinking was normal, but it's not really normal, right? As I've said before, common does not mean normal. And I think there's a lot of stuff on that toxic end of things that is very common, but needs to go away because it's not, in fact, normal. So, yeah. And like the whole family thing on that end too, like the relationship end of things. Like I have spent my whole life looking at my family and it's like there is not a single connection in this family that I would want to model my own relationship after, because they don't really seem like they're that happy. They seem more like they're to serve some kind of purpose, and that's the extent of it. Happiness doesn't give, you know, there's no concern for happiness. Who cares about that? As long as you're safe and, you know, not going to, I don't even know, right? So, you know, and like the dysfunction from the family that I was raised in led to way more dysfunction in the connection that I was married to, because all I saw was the toxicity, like, from my family. And then to be in this situation with, you know, where I thought I needed somebody outside of me to save me, and I needed either my dad or my brother to give me permission to not marry this dude, and they didn't do it for whatever reason, so I felt stuck and like I had to go through with it. And then, you know, I've talked about that on here a lot. You know, it's very not helpful. You know, and then like in the last year where he started saying things like he should have raped me when he had the chance, or how he saw himself getting so angry he could see himself accidentally killing somebody someday. It's like, you're looking, like you already said, that's on your agenda. If that's what that is, you're telling me that it is on the agenda if something doesn't change. And I've already served my purpose. I helped him get custody of his kid because, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of good options in that situation. The bigger thing was showing the kid that there was a different, he didn't have to turn out like his parents just because, you know, they were biologically his parents. They also really sucked, so he did not have to turn out like them if he didn't want to. But then the other one was my former brother-in-law and clearing his name from the shit he got drug into. You know, and I remember after the last day of the court stuff for the custody situation, of course, that whole, you know, I was the one that put the freaking shit together and had like all these different documents on a flash drive in case we needed them during the whole thing. And, you know, as soon as, you know, we were talking about any of it with the attorney afterwards, and you know, I would say, hey, would this work? And yes, we could use that. So the next thing I know, you know, me and my mom were going over to the attorney's office to have his secretary or whatever she is, print things off to take back over there for the next round, right? So it's like, that was me putting that shit together, being the runner to get this shit in front of the one singular judge so we could demonstrate how fucked up the situation was, right? So, you know, and because it was fucked up on both ends, at least if the kid was with his dad, I figured his vanity in trying to look better than his baby mama would at least keep him in the care of one therapist and not bouncing between them, right? So at least that was a perk over, you know, his mom, where he was getting ripped out of different therapists, different doctors, different schools, everything. As soon as they caught on to, she was the reason, she was the one making up all these different things to victimize him, you know, and create this world where he is just like this, you know, really abused child who shouldn't have any access to his father or his uncle. His uncle's the only person, I think his uncle was the one person that was the best for him, as far as he really loved his uncle. You know, they'd play video games together, and you know, so it was basically his mom had to destroy the one good connection he had on that end, for him to not want to go over there anymore. And of course, it didn't work, because, you know, I wasn't going to let that fly, since, you know, my brother-in-law had nothing to do with any of it. Like, he was trying to exist peacefully and go unnoticed. And because he was trying to go unnoticed, he got noticed, and he got a bunch of, like, really shitty attention put on him because of somebody that was just trying to, you know, fuck with everything. And my stomach's making a lot of noises today. That's so annoying. Hopefully you can't hear all of that. I make no promises, and I'm not redoing the video at this point, so yeah. But yeah, so just like all these different things that are like coming together, that I've been working on healing from, that I'm making sense of in a new way. And, you know, even like with world events, like this book that I am meant to be writing, this is big. And, you know, that's the thing. It's like just following the day-to-day inspiration and not getting really bogged down and overwhelmed with the immensity of it, because there's a whole fucking task, y'all. This whole journey has been really, I'm trying to figure out if there's anything that I was wanting. I was excited to talk about a lot of things, and then it's like, I know I definitely, you know, I covered the crab thing, and I got my necklaces fucked up because I pulled the one out. I hate it when I do that. Oh, well, at least Shiva Lingham's not fucked up. But yeah, you know, I don't know, I still would like to know what came of the other one. So I had this other one that was like primarily this gray kind of color, and it was a red stripe, but it was like a vertical stripe, and that was my first one. And I had it, I knew it was sketchy because I had it tied on another cord, and I had it tied to one of the necklaces I was wearing, but I checked it regularly to make sure I had it with me all the time. And then I ended up on grandma babysitting duty while my grandfather was in the hospital with the flu, and like early last year, and I had this night where I was doing like this meditation, and it was like some twin flame thing or whatever. And I left my grandma's house in the morning, and I realized I didn't have it anymore. It's like, where'd it go? And I went looking. I checked the driveway because I had gotten out and gotten the mail from the day before. And it's like, I checked the driveway, it wasn't there. I went over and checked my grandma's house, couldn't find it there. And I looked everywhere, and it's like, I told Annie early on when I started going to classes, it's like, there's like this twin flame meditation that I was doing. It's like, I kind of wouldn't be surprised if it shows up on his end somewhere along the line. It's like, I know that sounds really weird, like it's kind of exists in another timeline or something now. And she had a story that she told where there was a kid that had gotten killed in a car accident behind her property, and he had, like, I don't know if it was his grandfather or who it was, brought over like some blanket of some sort to leave it at the site, kind of a memorial sort of a thing. So she was keeping an eye on it, making sure it was there, and one morning she woke up and it wasn't there anymore. And when she was like concerned about it because suddenly it's not there, and this guy had put it there as like a memorial or whatever, she said she heard him say, like the kid say, I couldn't help it, I loved it so much I wanted to take it with me or something. It's like, so that's kind of weird. But like, it's like we had that weird connection point, so it's like, it might just be in the driveway, because there was some gravel that had been added to the end of the road because they were getting ready to do the work, and I think somebody had actually put like these deep holes, they ran off the side of the driveway and put big holes in the neighbor's yard, so they filled it with gravel, and it was about the same color, but it just was gone and I never could find it. So it's like, we'll see if it's meant to show up again. It will. So I definitely am a firm believer of that. Yeah, anyway, I don't know if there was anything else I wanted to cover or not, but tomorrow or possibly the next day, because tomorrow I think there's 2 appointments that have to be run. It might be tomorrow, we'll see. My money's on probably skating's more essential tomorrow after I spend the day with my parents again. Oh, that's what I was talking about earlier. The essentialness of being more connected in my body, and like that's what the whole exercising thing, my obsession with the skating, it was like providing the path for, okay, so I think it's Aaron Dowdy was talking about how, like, if you have a lot of trauma in like your early years, you end up like essentially hypervigilant on navigating through the spaces where you feel unsafe. And if you spend a lot of time on high alert because you're looking for the spaces that you feel unsafe, you get very disconnected from your body. So that was essentially my life. And I think that's also a big part of, like the overeating thing, the stress eating thing, tendency that I have, is because of that disconnection, right? Or the dissonance in that space, right? So then when I started skating all the time and I started making all these other connections, it was like this sort of pathway from the upper chakras to come down into the lower chakras again, right? So like on the twin flame stuff, they talk a lot about the masculine twin rules over the lower chakras, which is the root, the sacral, and the solar plexus, and the feminine twin rules over the upper chakras, so crown, third eye, and throat. That's another one. So like a big part of navigating this space has been connecting to my body, right? And I've talked a lot about feeling unsafe in my body, and that was like the first thing that I was really made aware of after this twin flame connection came up, after I encountered his energy, and like before I even knew who he was, encountered his energy, and then it's like just this overwhelming sense of feeling unsafe in my body. And what do you do with that? So it took some time, but eventually I started skating, and that helped immensely. And then, you know, now I branched out with running. I ran today 2 miles, so yeah, I'm still working on it. It's not real superb, but apparently I checked my app earlier, and you know, I keep track of my dog walking, skating, and running all in the same app. Dog walking is in 2 different apps, because one donates money to charity, and the other has like all these challenges that come up that only take running or walking or hiking. And I don't know why they don't count skating, because that really annoys the crap out of me. And I tried to like connect with somebody at one point to figure out why. Yeah, because it was like something with getting outside for exercise. It's like, skating, I skate outside all the time. Why doesn't that count? Because I'd probably have that challenge whooped by now. But you know, there's the span of time where the dog walking app stopped working, so I started doing the dog walking on the other app, and then, you know, all these challenges started popping up. It's like, well, I want to keep doing those because it's something that, yeah, I'm doing it anyway. Why not be for a challenge as well? But yeah, like I checked for this week, so it is Wednesday, and since Sunday I've gotten 21 miles in between skating, dog walking, and running. So that's kind of fun. The other thing, okay, the blue. Okay, so throat chakra. So this morning, you know, when I had these thoughts about the writing and the connecting with the spirit of the book, right? So I have these thoughts, and then I sent myself a text message, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and write it, you know. And of course, I've talked before about the journal, you know, I've talked about the journals that I'm writing in, you know, the twin flame books, essentially, because the entire, since January 2024, like everything that's happened, I've been trying to keep track of, like, the big things, the big things I'm learning, that are changing, and, you know, just the whole whatever you would journal about, and then some. You know, so some days it's cards I've pulled, right? Anyway, so I'm in the 16th one right now, and the 16th is associated with the Tower card, and I have talked a whole lot about being a bit of an instigator of Tower moments for other people, right? So just something about me tends to bring out those kind of moments for other people, right? So as the example that I've talked about most recently on here, where I was kind of questioning it because of, okay, so the dude my senior year in undergrad, you know, I've talked a lot about, because he shouldn't have had access to my energy, but, you know, I entertained the thing for a minute anyway, and he got access to my energy. Then this other toxic dude ended up with access to me that never should have had access to me, right? All because this other guy, you know, even though I didn't take him seriously from the get-go, you know, because I still hung out with him and spent more time on that than I should have, it ended up giving somebody else that shouldn't have had access to me, right? But then the thing that I was talking about the other day was, okay, so what if a big part of that, you know, this idea that I was too much for people, right? Because I immediately knew that guy couldn't handle my energy, the one that I connected with. And so then, you know, in the video the other day, I was talking about, okay, so what if that was just my parents speaking through me, right? Because I spent my whole life feeling like I was too much for people. So what if that was the thing that was just a means of blocking everybody else out to keep me from connecting to people outside of the family, right? But I also mentioned that on that Tower moment piece, if that situation wouldn't have gone badly the way that it did, that guy probably would have continued to stay connected with the friend group that he had in that house, right? But since, you know, it went so drastically less than ideal, subpar, he freaked out and started talking to everybody and, you know, about me and how crazy I was and all this shit, and then turned around and, you know, what if the answer to him not being able to connect to the old friends that he had in that space anymore, which again was because he chose to not come back, but still, because I was there, he chose to not come back. But, you know, as that sort of tower moment piece, the friends that he ended up connecting with that, you know, kind of enhanced this icky side. Oh my God. Fucking squirrel, man. He didn't know I was here either. And now he's over there just looking. I think he just ran down the tree. I don't know. It scared the shit out of me. But anyway, like that possibility. What if, you know, because he didn't go to that space anymore to connect with the better friends, it, you know, became this sort of tower moment where he shifted into this lower energy space and started choosing to hang out with, you know, ickier people himself, right? So anyway, that was just a thought. Anyway, so I'm in the 16th book now, and oh, there's so much with it, right? So it's like the tower moment of the books, and so I'm like making connections, making sense of like this whole writing project and connecting with the spirit of the book and trying to move in that direction, right? And so last night I'm writing. Okay, when I started these books, I had an abundance of green pens. Because I would get the packs that had the colored pens, because I like the pink and purple ones and the light blue and all these things, but I never used the green ones, so I had a huge amount of the green ones. Well, so when I started doing the Twin Flame books, then I was thinking green is a heart chakra color, lower heart chakra, so we'll just use them there, right? And so all the way through the books, I have used green pens, unless something happened and I was writing in the middle of the night and ran out of the green ink and only had like pink with me, because I have done that a couple times. But it's temporary when it's been in the other books. When it happened with this book, I was out of green pens, like period. I have yet to find any more. There might be another one sneaking around somewhere, but I haven't found it yet. So I just moved on to pink, because pink is associated with the higher heart chakra. Right? So it's like, okay, that'll work. So since it was what I had, that's what I started using. So then I start, you know, with these ideas with this writing project last night or this morning or whatever. My pink pen died. I don't have any more pens other there except for a blue one. And then it made me think, and I even wrote about it this morning, it's like, I feel like even that makes sense for this whole thing, because like I'm at this sort of tower moment thing where, you know, all the old facets of me have essentially been cleared out, and we are, you know, navigating this newer space and actually coming into the thing that I've been supposed to do like all my life, right? You know, I talked yesterday in the video about my freshman year in undergrad. I had the teacher who always would talk about write books, make millions, and change the paradigms of the world. It was always like, yeah, I want to do that. Right? But then it was like, yeah, and then like the When God Writes Your Love Story, When God Writes Your Life Story books, right? The Christian authors, you know, talking about their little love life and, you know, how God, you know, brought them together and all those things, right? So that piece, right? So, and part of the reason that connection that I mentioned went so badly was because I had posed the the idea the day before it went badly, and I said, you know, he kissed me in the main Bible study area in the house, and you know, he was hugging me after, and I remember thinking, God, this is nice, but if this is not what you have for me, if this is not the one for me, then take it away. I don't want it. Right? And so it was like leaning into that idea of letting God write the story, right? Which there again was important all along the way. And then when I come back to it in 2023 and commit my love and career lives over to the universe to take the lead on, why this whole twin flame thing has come up, and why this whole, I mean, essentially all of it, because that's been the thing that has forced me to move beyond myself to start thinking about this big thing that I have long known that I'm supposed to be writing. You know, there's like that professor planted this seed, you know, in my soul that, you know, that was the thing that I was meant to be doing. Write books, make millions, change the paradigms of the world. I like that idea, right? That sounds really exciting, and you know, also worth mentioning. I found it. Okay, so like on the you know, I've talked about how in high school I set the intention that I would never have kids if I could not heal from the shit that my mom was putting on me to have to heal from, because I refused to pass that on. And the thought has come up many times about, you know, my namesake in the Bible was ultimately, you know, she was 90 years old when she had her first kid. And I just kind of leaned into that. It's like, you know what? Whenever God deems it's the right time, nothing's going to be able to block that. If that, you know, if I'm meant to have kids when I'm fucking 90, which I don't think that'll be the case, because I don't want that. But at the same time, you know, it's like, for it to have been this story, it was enough that it's like, all right, you know, if I'm 50, who cares, right? I'm 42 right now, and as far as I know, everything works fine. So, so yeah, but like seeing people, or like hearing stories in the recent years of people in like their 50s and 60s that, you know, ended up pregnant, and, you know, like all the people that said shitty things about them, because there's a lot of that in my family. What business you have doing that? Blah, blah, blah. That kind of bullshit. But like that idea was always there. It's like, whenever it's time, nothing's going to stand in the way of it when it's time, right? But then also, you know, like the things that are important to me, and this idea, okay, the sign of Cancer is the mother of the zodiac, which is an interesting thing in and of itself. It's, you know, there's this aspect of me that is maternal in nature and caring about people who have not been sufficiently parented, ultimately. You know, like people like me that, you know, end up with a mom that they feel like hates them or whatever on various levels, right? And then you have to have all that shit to heal from, right? So it's like there's this level where I feel like there is, you know, and I've pulled cards that have talked about it as well, that talk about like essentially how God has a group of nurturing spirits that are here to serve this purpose, as, you know, ultimately mothering people who didn't have good situations with their mothers for whatever reason, right? And that kind of space. So it's like that's something that's I've always felt very connected to. And then to that biblical namesake of, you know, she was the mother of nations, right? That was what she was supposed to be. It just seems like just all these weird things that like are weaving together. But yeah, who knows? Anyway, I'm gonna wrap it up because we're pushing an hour and a half, and these bugs are annoying the crap out of me, and they're on my notebook too. I was going to spend some time sitting by this tree and writing my outline, and I think I'm going to take that at home because there's a lot of spiders that keep coming back too. And I don't have a problem with the spiders. I am in their territory after all, but I really don't want to take a bunch home with me either, so yeah. That one that followed me the other day to when I did my video at the school, and I said there was a spider that went with me and crawled. I was pretty sure he crawled across my foot. Yeah, that wasn't really ideal. But there's that little cartoon spider. I think his name's Lucas, the spider. It looks like him. But that's just a random thing. Anyway, on that note, as always, I appreciate you. Until the next time. See ya.